Nitrogen asphyxiation has been approved in some places as a method of capital punishment. When humans breathe in an asphyxiant gas, such as pure nitrogen, helium, neon, argon, methane, or any other physiologically inert gas, they exhale carbon dioxide without resupplying oxygen. Physiologically inert gases are generally free of odor and taste. Accordingly, the human subject detects little abnormal sensation as the oxygen level falls. This leads to asphyxiation, death from lack of oxygen, without the painful and traumatic feeling of suffocation, the hypercapnic alarm response, which in humans arises mostly from carbon dioxide levels rising, or the side effects of poisoning. In scuba diving or breather accidents, a slow decrease in oxygen-breathing gas content can produce variable or no sensation. By contrast, suddenly breathing pure inert gas causes oxygen levels in the blood to fall precipitously, and may lead to unconsciousness in only a few breaths, with no symptoms at all. Alternatively, the use of the term hypoxia has been used, but this term is flawed given hypoxia does not necessarily imply death. On the other hand, asphyxiation is technically incorrect given respiration continues and the carbon dioxide metabolically produced from the oxygen inhaled prior to inert gas asphyxiation can be exhaled without restriction, which can prevent acidosis and the strong urge to breathe caused by hypercapnia. The term physiologically inert is used to indicate a gas which has no toxic or anesthetic properties and does not act upon the heart or hemoglobin. Instead, the gas acts as a simple diluent to reduce the oxygen concentration in inspired gas and blood to dangerously low levels, thereby eventually depriving cells in the body of oxygen. In humans, breathing an oxygen-deficient atmosphere can have serious and immediate effects, including unconsciousness after only 1 or 2 breaths. The exposed person has no warning and cannot sense that the oxygen level is too low. In the U.S., at least 80 people died from accidental nitrogen asphyxiation between 1992 and 2002. On September 26, 2024, Alan Eugene Miller was executed by nitrogen hypoxia, in Alabama. Miller was scheduled to be executed via lethal injection on September 22, 2022. But his execution was called off after prison staff failed to establish intravenous access to deliver a lethal injection. It was concluded they would not be able to complete the execution by the midnight deadline. Miller filed a federal lawsuit following the failed execution attempt. In November 2022, the state of Alabama agreed it would not use lethal injection to execute Miller and would instead use nitrogen gas. Alan Eugene Miller came to Alabama death row because, on August 5, 1999, Miller shot and killed 2 of his co-workers, 32-year-old Lee Holdbrooks and 28-year-old Christopher Yancey, at a heating and air conditioning distributor, then drove 5 miles to a business where he had previously worked and shot and killed his former supervisor, 39-year-old Terry Jarvis. Holdbrooks was shot 6 times, Yancey was shot 3 times, and Jarvis was shot 5 times. After the shooting, Miller drove off, only to be pulled over later that day on the side of an Alabama highway after being spotted by police. It required 4 officers and 4 sets of handcuffs to subdue him. Pelham police arrested Miller during a traffic stop on the same day of the murders. Once Miller was handcuffed, officers found a Glock lying on the driver's seat and an empty ammunition magazine on the passenger seat. Despite Miller being deemed mentally ill by a forensic psychiatrist during his sentencing hearing, the court ordered him to be executed for the shootings, finding that his condition did not meet the level of mania necessary to establish an insanity defense under Alabama law. Miller suffered from a delusional disorder that substantially impaired his rational ability. This delusional disorder, coupled with Miller's history as a loner, resulted in Miller's believing the people he worked with talked about him and that they had spread rumors about him. Miller believed that Terry Jarvis had told other employees at Post Airgas that Miller was a homosexual. A psychiatrist hired by Miller's defense found he suffered from severe mental illness. At the time of the shootings, he was employed as a delivery truck driver at Ferguson Enterprises in Pelham. In March this year, Miller's attorneys filed for a preliminary injunction in federal court to stop the execution, arguing that it violated his rights to be free from cruel and unusual punishment. Alabama is evidently unable to carry out a nitrogen hypoxia execution without cruelly superadding pain and disgrace, and prolonging death, a federal complaint filed by Miller's attorneys says. Attorneys also said Miller was obese, had asthmatic bronchitis, and received a diabetic food tray where was housed at Holman Correctional Facility. Miller's attorneys and the state entered into a confidential agreement in August this year. Miller was executed by nitrogen hypoxia at the Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama, on September 26, 2024. He was pronounced dead at 6:38 p.m. local time. For his last meal he had a hamburger steak, a baked potato, and French fries. His final words were, "I didn't do anything to be in here." The execution began at 6:18 p.m. with gas flow. Miller gasped and struggled against restraints for about 2 minutes until he lost consciousness at 6:19 p.m. He gasped several more times and then appeared to take his last breath at 6:26 p.m. The curtain to the chamber closed at 6:32 p.m. On Wednesday, the 25th of September 2024, Miller had 7 visitors, and on Thursday, the 26th of September 2024, he had 9. The Reverend Jeff Hood, a spiritual advisor who has witnessed more than a half-dozen executions, was at Smith's and described it as being horrific and bringing society closer to a moral apocalypse. We're talking about minutes and minutes of thrashing and spitting. His head going up and down and back and forth. The expletive gurney that's bolted to the floor started shaking. With nitrogen hypoxia is used, the inmate breathes pure nitrogen through a mask that displaces oxygen in their system. Proponents claim it is an almost instant and painless method. Opponents, including Hood, claim it is largely untried and tortuous. Although the methods have changed over the years, it remains the judgment of the state of Alabama that some crimes are so horrific as to warrant the ultimate punishment. Attorney General Marshall said in his statement on Thursday, September 26, 2024. In Alabama, we will not deny justice to the victims of heinous murders. Tonight, despite misinformation campaigns by political activists, out-of-state lawyers, and biased media, the state proved once again that nitrogen hypoxia is both humane and effective. Miller's execution went as expected and without incident. Alan Eugene Miller was 55 years old at the time of his execution. Thank you for watching Death Row.